All right, everybody, we are back for Hegelians of the Storm, Part 5. Can you believe that we're already at Part 5? Every second of every day, the question keeps rattling in my head. What can I do? What should I do? Oh my God. Oh my God. And, um, the answer has to always be whatever you feel like will advance the means of the working class. So that is why we are reading through Hegel, because that is what I can do right now. In this second, I can continue reading Hegel and making Hegel more accessible, so that way I can make Marx and Engels more accessible, so that way you, the viewer, can go out and say, dang, I think I'm going to check out what is going on by Marx and Engels, because every single day it becomes more and more relevant. Let's see. Do I actually want to play Auriel or Dahaka? It looks like Auriel is going to be the pick. Okay. So again, we're starting part 5 of Hegel. This is going to be self-consciousness, technically part B. So part 5 in the series of us reading it together. But Part B is officially what we're now on, which I think is still Chapter 1, Part B, which is pretty funny. Let's see. I think I want to go with Ray of Heaven. Also deals damage because it's fun to deal damage. We're going to put that onto... So we have a little top hat. We give out that top hat for free. And everybody who sits in said top hat, or sorry, whoever owns the top hat, is who I gain a percentage of the damage that they deal as energy, which I can then convert into healing. We're gonna pick up a really fun talent, I think at level, yep, at level 4, that allows us to, whenever we use our E, knocking somebody into the wall, not like that. What happens is they get stunned and then they take progressively larger and larger and larger amounts of damage, up until you get like a whopping like 300 damage, just on one E. So, ooh, and I missed. I need this Junkrat to use some of his abilities. Auriel is a really good hero to combo with characters who are capable of producing consistent DPS. Oh, I missed that. Oh, I fell off? Ooh, I needed that. This gigantic radius around me is the range of the top hat. Additionally, I can generate energy on my own using either auto attacks or my Q, and E if it deals damage, if I'm able to hit it. Okay, repeated. Boom. There was one. And again, at level 1, I picked up a talent allowing me to deal damage with my W, which is my healing. Nice, that's 2. Again, we just want to stack that up as much as possible. Let's heal our Dahaka. That was first blood. Wow. Would you look at that? Yeah, you get a tiny little smacky healing because I'm out of juice. I'm sauceless. I'm sauceless in LA. If you have been watching the channel, you will know that I haven't had a fridge for a while, and I will tell you right now that we still don't have a fridge. So being fridgeless is pretty peculiar, because what that means is a lot of sauceless sandwiches. And I'm sure everybody came here to listen to me on. And I'm getting chunked by a whole bunch of stuff. Yeah, get her, Junkrat. Missed my E. Classic. The classic not hitting my abilities button. Let's see. Reduces the cost. That stacks really well a little bit later on, but usually by that point in the game, every time I've taken this, it doesn't actually wind up mattering. Dude, we found you. I know where you are. I don't think he knows how Zagara works. I think he's going to do it again. Nice. Got it. On a technicality. Let's see. Stores 25% damage taken. Oh, let's just increase my auto attack range. Oh, I missed. Oh, the range is a lot shorter than I think it is. At what level? Or maybe it doesn't happen. Where I thought that there was a talent that increased the range at which that increased the range at which your E hit, but it seems that that is not a thing. No! Alright, well, we have now maxed out our little quest that we had. Meaning that this now, what does it do? After stunning 6 heroes, increase this damage bonus to 250%. Or 250. So now we should be able to hit for quite a bit of damage. Quite a bit. Crystal Aegis is always really good, and I've seen good Auriels pick it. And every time that I have ever picked it, it's never been good. Because I don't know how to use it. So we're going to learn and change and grow and become better people, because that is what this is all about. And I'm knocking somebody into the wall. I'm ready with my crystal prison on myself. Didn't help. Still wound up dying. Put an allied hero into stasis for 2 seconds. Upon expiration, deals a bunch of damage. Poor Zagara just got lasered. Snowflake, no! Oops. Tank Auriel. Careful, Junkrat. I've only got so many healings. So many healing? Oh. Oh, yikes. Yikes. Well, that was great. That was honestly such a good combination of abilities. They absolutely deserve that. Do I feel bad that happened to me? Yes. I don't feel bad for watching that, though. That was like perfect setup. We can nullify a lot of Li Ming's damage because of how bursty our healing is as well. Is there a cooldown on that ability? I was really debating on if that was the time to Crystal Aegis myself, which I guess probably would have been. Probably would have been. But what does this do for the working class? I don't know. I don't know. It sucks whenever we are in a situation where our team seems to fall apart. We were watching that live. Um, I debate. I debate every day about muting the chat. But then I'd miss out on the drama. And God knows I love some drama. I did burn my entire energy bar right there just to be able to see if they were taking that point or not. I am not. And I'm probably going to wind up doing it again. Yep, they are. I like how we all just stood there for a little bit. I like how we're still just standing here a little bit. There is no space that we will not give up. Again, wonderful, wonderful start to today's Heroes of the Storm games. Oh god, if that bomb hits me, I'm probably dead. Alright, nice. And I was dead. Tragic. Tragic. The level 16 talent that we picked up is the Reservoir of Hope. So every time that I cast my W with maximum energy, that then... Yeah, let's go with Zagara. Every time that my W is at max energy... Oh, man. We're not going to live. Then I get more energy to spend, so ideally it would increase exponentially the amount of healing that we're able to. Well, not exponentially. It's a flat rate. It's a flat rate, but it's a nice rate. Nice rate of expansion. Our team has absolutely given up. Oh, great. Get away from me. Get away from me. They are beating me the heck up. Their Kharazim is doing great. Our team is not. If only y'all could have seen the Lily game that I played just before this. I swear it went well. I should honestly start, maybe just start out with Hegel, rather than going over and trying to do a Heroes of the Storm game first. Woof, I had half the healing. But there's always room to grow, always room to change. And on that note, let's bring over the document. Oh, here we go. Self-consciousness. I swear I had it ready. Part 4. The truth of certainty of oneself. In the previous modes of certainty, the true for consciousness is something other than itself. But the concept of this true vanishes in the experience of it. The object was immediately of a certain sort in itself, the being of sensory certainty, the concrete thing of perception, the force of the understanding, but the object proves rather to not be like that in truth. Instead, this in itself turns out to be a mode in which the object is only for another. The concept of the object sublates itself in the actual object or the first. Immediate representation of the object sublates itself in experience, and certainty got lost in the truth. But from now on, something has arisen that did not emerge in those previous relationships, a vis-a-vis, a certainty which is equal to its truth. For the certainty is to itself its own object, and consciousness is to itself the true. In this there is indeed an otherness too, that is to say, consciousness draws a distinction, but one which at the same time is for consciousness a non-distinction. If we give the name concept to the movement of knowing, and the name object to the knowing as tranquil unity, or as I, then we see that not only for us, but for knowing itself, the object corresponds to the concept. Water break, early on. Oh man, that's not a lot of water in that cup. Or put in the other way, if what the object is in itself is called the concept, but what it is as but what it is as object or for another is called the object, then it is clear that being in itself and being for another are the same. For the in itself is consciousness, but equally it is that for which another, the in itself is, and it is for consciousness that the in itself of the object and the being of the object for another are the same. I is the content of the relation and the relating itself. I is I itself in contrast to another, and at the same time it overarches this other, which for the I is equally only the I itself. What my takeaway from that first paragraph is that this was a Bon Iver reference to the hit album I, I. Hegel truly was a fan. With self-consciousness, then, we have now entered the narrative realm of truth. We have to see how the shape of self-consciousness first emerges. If we consider this new shape of knowing, the knowing of oneself, in its relationship to the foregoing, the knowing of another, then this other has indeed vanished, but its moments have at the same time also been preserved, and the loss consists in this, that here they are present as they are in themselves, the being of meaning, the singularity, and the universality opposed to it of perception, as also the empty interior of the understanding are no longer as essences, but as moments of self-consciousness, i.e., as abstractions, or as distinctions which at the same time are null for consciousness itself, or not distinctions at all and purely vanishing essences. Thus it seems that only the principal moment of itself has been lost, vis-a-vis the simple independent subsistence for consciousness. But in fact, self-consciousness is the reflection out of the being of the sensory and perceived world, and essentially the return from otherness. As self-consciousness, it is movement. But since it distinguishes only itself as itself from itself, the difference as an otherness is immediately sublated for it. The difference is not, and self-consciousness is only the motionless tautology of I am I. Hey, there was that Bon Iver reference we were talking about. But since it, for the difference, does not have even the shape of being, it is not self-consciousness. Hence, otherness is, as for it, as a being, or as a distinct moment. But there is also for consciousness the unity of itself with this difference as a second distinct moment. With that first moment, self consciousness is as consciousness, and the whole expanse of the sensory world is preserved for it, but at the same time only as related to the second moment, the unity of self consciousness with itself, and herewith the sensory world is for it a subsistence which, however, is only appearance, or a difference which, in itself, has no being. This opposition of its appearance and its truth, however, for its essence, only the truth, a vis-a-vis, the unity of self-consciousness with itself. This unity must be essential to self-consciousness, i.e., self-consciousness is desire in general. From now on, consciousness as self-consciousness has a double object. One is the immediate object, that of sense, certainty, and perception, which, however, is marked for it with the character of the negative, and the second, vis-a-vis, itself, which is the true essence, which is present initially only in the opposition to the first object. In this, self consciousness presents itself as the movement in which this opposition is sublated and the equality of itself with itself arises for it. But for us, or in itself, the object which for self consciousness is the negative has on its side returned into itself, just as consciousness has done on the other side. Through this reflection into itself, the object has become life. What self consciousness distinguishes from itself as being also has in it, insofar as it is posited as being, not merely the mode of sensory certainty and perception, but it is being reflected into itself, and the object of immediate desire is a living creature. For the in itself, or the universal result of the relationship of understanding to the interior of things, this is the distinguishing of what is not to be distinguished, or the unity of what is to be distinguished. Wait, did I read that right? Or the unity of what is distinguished. But this unity is, as we have seen, just as much its repulsion from itself, and this concept divides itself into the opposition of self consciousness and life. The former is the unity for which the infinite unity of the differences is. The latter, however, is only this unity itself, so that it is not at the same time for itself. To the extent, then, that consciousness is independent, so too is its object independent in itself. Self consciousness, which is simply for itself and immediately marks its object with the character of the negative, or is initially desire, will therefore rather undergo the experience of the object's independence. The determination of life as it emerges from the concept or from the universal result with which we enter this sphere is sufficient to characterize it without developing its nature from that any further. The circle of this determination completes itself in the following moments. The essence is infinity, as the sublatedness of all differences, the pure movement of axial rotation. The repose of this infinity is absolutely restless infinity, independence itself, in which the differences of the movement are resolved, the simple essence of time which, in this equality with itself, has the solid shape of space. But in this simple universal medium, the differences are just as much differences, for this universal fluidity has its negative nature only in the being a sublation of these differences. But it cannot sublate the items differentiated if they do not have subsistence. It is just this fluidity as independence equal to itself, which is itself the subsistence or the substance of these differences, in which they are therefore as differentiated members and parts that are for themselves. Being no longer has the significance of the abstraction of being, nor has their pure essentiality the significance of the abstraction of universality. Rather, their being is just that simple fluid substance of pure movement within itself. The difference, however, of these members with respect to another, as difference, consists in general in no other determinancy than the determinancy of the moments of infinity or of the pure movement itself. The independent members are for themselves, but this being for self is really just as immediately their reflection into the unity as this unity is the division into independent shapes. The unity is divided because it is absolutely negative or infinite unity, and because this unity is the subsistence, the difference too has independence only in it. This independence of the shape appears as something determinate for another, for the shape is a product of division, and the sublation of the division accordingly takes place through another. But this sublation is just as much within the shape itself, for it is just that fluidity that is the substance of the independent shapes. But this substance is infinite, and so the shape in its very subsistence is division, or the sublation of its being for itself. Whoa. I don't know. When I was reading that, it was just kind of like, not, I didn't like zone out, but it was like it just kind of felt smooth. It just felt smooth to read. Like my brain wanted to take that information in. It was like I wanted to learn that. That was really weird. Let's keep it going though. If we distinguish more exactly the moments contained here, we see that we have, as the first movement, the subsistence of the independent shapes, or the suppression of what the differentiating is in itself, namely, not to be in itself and to have no subsistence. The second moment, however, is the subjugation of that subsistence to the infinity of the difference. In the first moment, there is the subsistent shape as being for itself, or in its determinacy, infinite substance. It emerges in opposition to the universal substance, disowns this fluidity and continuity with it, and asserts itself not as dissolved in this universal, but rather as preserving itself by separation from this in from this its inorganic nature, and by consuming it. Life in the universal fluid medium, a calm deployment of the shapes, becomes, just by doing so, the movement of those shapes, or becomes life as process. Hmm. The simple universal fluidity is the in itself, and the difference of the shapes is the other. But this fluidity itself becomes the other through this difference, for now it is for the difference, which is in and for itself, and consequently is the infinite movement by which this calm medium is consumed. Life as a living thing. Water break, but I don't have any water. This inversion, however, is for that reason again an invertedness in its own self. What is consumed is the essence, the individuality which maintains itself at the expense of the universal, and gives itself the feeling of its unity with itself, just by doing so sublates its opposition with the other. The opposition through which it is for itself, the unity with itself that it gives to itself, is just the fluidity of the differences or the universal dissolution. But conversely, the sublation of the individual subsistence is equally the generation of it. For since the essence of the individual shape is universal life, and what is for itself is in itself simple substance, when what is for itself posits the other within itself, it sublates this its simplicity or its essence, i.e., it divides it, and this division of the undifferentiated fluidity is just the positing of individuality. Thus, the simple substance of life is the division of itself into shapes, and at the same time the dissolution of these subsistent differences, and the dissolution of the division is just as much division or an articulation of members. With this, with this, the two sides of the whole movement which were distinguished, vis-a-vis the calmly deployed shaping in the universal medium of independence, and the process of life, collapse into one another. The latter is just as much a shaping as it is the sublation of shape, and the former, the shaping, is just as much a sublation as it is shaping. The fluid element is itself only the abstraction of the essence, or it is an actual only as shape, and its articulation of itself into members is again a division of what is articulated or a dissolution of it. It is this whole cycle that constitutes life, not what was expressed at the outset, the immediate continuity and solidity of its essence, nor the subsistent shape and the discrete being for itself, nor the pure process of these, nor even the simple combination of these moments, but rather the whole that develops itself and dissolves its development, and in this movement simply maintains itself. Weird. Since we start from the first immediate unity and return through the moments of shaping and of process to the unity of those two moments, and thus back again to the first simple substance, this reflected unity is different from the first unity. In contrast to that immediate unity or unity expressed as a being, this second unity is the universal unity, which has in it all these moments as sublated. It is the simple genus which in the movement of life itself does not exist for itself as this simple. Rather, in this result, life points to something other than itself, a vis-a-vis, to consciousness, for which life is as this unity, or as genus. This other life, however, for which the genus as such is, and which is genus for its own self, self consciousness, is initially to itself only as this simple essence, and it has itself as pure I for object in its experience, which we are now to consider in this abstract object will enrich itself for self consciousness and undergo the unfolding which we have seen in life. The simple I is this genus, or the simple universal, for which the differences are no differences, but only by its being the negative essence of the shaped independent moments, and self consciousness is thus certain of itself only by sublating this other than that presents itself to self consciousness as independent life. Self consciousness is desire. Certain of the nothingness of this other, it posits this nothingness for itself as its truth, annihilates the independent object, and thereby gives itself the certainty of its of itself as true certainty, as the sort of certainty that has arisen for it in an objective manner. In this satisfaction, however, self consciousness undergoes the experience of the independence of its object. Desire and the self certainty obtained in the satisfaction of desire are conditioned by the object, for self certainty comes from this sublating this other. Comes from sublating this other. For there is, oh my goodness, for there to be this sublation, there must be this other. Thus, self consciousness cannot sublate the object by its negative relation to it. Other of that, it is. Goodness. Hold on, let me stop the scrolling. Stop the scroll! Because of that, it instead generates the object again and the desire as well. It is in fact something other than self consciousness that is the essence of desire. And through this experience, this truth has dawned on self consciousness itself. But at the same time, self consciousness is no less absolutely for itself, and it is so only by sublating the object, and it must get its satisfaction, for it is the truth. Owing to the independence of the object, therefore, self-consciousness can achieve satisfaction only when the object itself effects the negation within itself, and it must effect this negation of itself in itself, for it is in itself the negative, and must be for the other what it is. Since the object is negation in its own self, and yet is at the same time independent, it is consciousness. In life, which is the object of desire, negation is either in another, vis-a-vis, in desire, or as a determinacy confronting another in different shape, or as life's inorganic universal nature. But this universal independent nature in which negation is as absolute negation is the genus as such, or as self consciousness. Self consciousness achieves its satisfaction only in another self consciousness. Okay, so meaning that life has to have other life. Um, all right. The concept of self consciousness is only completed in these three moments. A. The pure, undifferentiated I is its first immediate object. B. But this immediacy is itself an absolute mediation. It is only as a sublation of the independent object, or it is desire. The satisfaction of desire is, of course, the reflection of self consciousness into itself, or the certainty that has become truth. And see, but the truth of the certainty is really a double reflection, the duplication of self consciousness. There is for consciousness an object which, in its own self, posits its otherness or posits the difference as a null difference, and in so doing is independent. The differentiated, merely living shape does indeed also sublate its independence on the process of life itself, but it ceases with its difference to be what it is. But the object of self consciousness is just as independent in this negativity of itself, and thus it is for itself genus, universal fluidity in the peculiarity of its isolation. It is living self consciousness. There is a self consciousness for a self consciousness. Only it is in fact self consciousness, for in this way does the unity of itself in its otherness come to be for it. I, which is the object of its concept, is in fact not object. The object of desire, however, is only independent, for it is the universal indestructible substance, the fluid essence equal to its own self. When a self consciousness is the object is just as much I as object. With this, we already have before us the concept of spirit. Whoa. Whoa. Okay. Starting to get good. I I think that I struggled with consciousness, you know, just trying to grasp it, but now all of a sudden we're talking about self-consciousness, and while I'm not tracking every single word that's coming through here, I'm I'm liking what I'm reading. It's resonating with something, and that's a weird experience. Okay, I want to read that part again. There is a self consciousness for a self consciousness. Only so it is, in fact, self consciousness, for only in this way does the unity of itself in its otherness come to be for it. I, which is the object of its concept, is in fact not object. The object of desire, however, is only independent, for it is the universal indestructible substance, the fluid essence equal to its own self. When a self consciousness is the object is just as much I as object. With this, we have already before us the concept of spirit. What still lies ahead for consciousness is the experience of what spirit is, this absolute substance which, in the perfect freedom and independence of its opposition, vis-a-vis, of diverse self-consciousness that are for themselves, is the unity of these self-consciousnesses. I that is we, and we that is I. It is in self consciousness, as the concept of spirit, that consciousness first has its turning point, where it leaves behind the colorful semblance of the sensory here and now and the empty night of the supersensible beyond, and steps out into the spiritual day of presence. Whoa. I didn't know this was a philosophy book. This is starting to sound like philosophy. Part A of B. Independence and dependence of self-consciousness, lordship and bondage. Wow, this we're starting to hit the gas here. We're definitely starting to pick up. But what I am going to do is I am going to stop losing control of the mouse. Is what I'm going to do. We're going to hit the pause button. Let's bring it back over to Heroes of the Storm, because I want to, I think, play another game just before breaking into that one. I kind of want to sit with that whole idea of the introduction of spirit, because now that we know the spirit, pretty soon we're going to know the phenomenology. And while this is loading, I'm going to go double fill my glasses of water because I am very thirsty. What is up? We're so back. I guess somewhere along the lines of making fun of Hegel and the phenomenology of the spirit, I I guess I gave up on the idea that we were ever going to get to the spirit part of it, and to see that that has happened relatively quickly, I'm like, oh, okay. Well, it's time to have a whole lot of fun. Oh God. Alextraza, Kael'thas, or Deathwing. Alextraza, Kael'thas, or Deathwing. I think I love ARAM just because it is so random. You literally never know what you're gonna get. You can open prey, that's for sure. That was me drinking water. Hope you like that. Let's see. Do I want to heal or do I want to hurt people? I don't know what I want to do. I definitely don't want to do the Q build. They're all kind of going to be long range. I think I'm going to heal. We're going to bring life to others. No. I wanted that. Oh, Morales. Shoot. You got snatched. Going for that globe. I'm going for this globe. I'm globe maxing. Can't let Stitches win. Is that Hogger? Why is Hogger here? Nice. I don't want to die though. This is going to be a really weird game. So Asmodan is just going to do a whole lot of dunking. Yes, got the globe. Oh, but I might die for it. Oh, I might die for it. I didn't realize the whole team would be down there looking for that globe. As soon as I get 15 globes, though, I'm done hunting globes because I will be producing globes. Let's see. So we've got Dragon Form up. Oops. Missed my Q, or missed my E. Missed my E again. Oops, that is not the right button. Going for the globe. Damn. Thought I could dodge it. Boing. Got him. Got him. Okay, we're at 10 globes. Can we get 11 right here? Morales. We hold the line. Behold the dive rocket launcher. $13. We're doing great. I feel like at this point I really should have gone DPS. Just gonna throw that out there for a team while I pick up my last globe. Boom. Okay, so now each time that I cast my W ability, we spawn regen globes for our teammates who gain... Oh no! Who gain extra healing. And I don't know what is up with a Hogger being in every single game. Okay. Okay. But how did that affect my material conditions? Give me that globe. That's my own globe. Going big. Okay. Oh, I walked into that. Quite literally. Yeah, that was a great stun. I walked up way too far. That was entirely my fault. Surely I will learn my lesson. Okay, we are going to go with Cleansing Flame gets me out of jail. Lifelink saves more lives. Ooh, I was really early on that. Gotta watch my own health bar. Currently, the only person doing that is Morales. Oh, man. Okay. We're holding the line. Great grasps. Wow, I am so early on my E's every time. Dang. I did not learn my lesson. I'm just so overwhelmed with the phenomenology of the spirit. I'm joking. I'm just not good. Oh, damn it. Oh my god, there's no cooldown on that. Oh man. Oh man. Hey everybody. I swear one of these days I'm going to lock in for the stream. But that day is not today. Oh my god, and it counted too. Okay. I'm in the belly. At least I get damage reduction. God, I'm so dead. Oh man. I'm just scratching my brain as to what I could do differently besides play so passively that nothing actually happens. Maybe I should have picked Deathwing. I think I'm playing as if I had Deathwing. Oh my god. They're outputting so much damage. Oh man. What even killed me? What even killed me? Okay, so we got hit by Chromie, that thing, Hogger for 1,000 billion health, Lightning Shield, that does a lot of damage. Strafe, okay, Lightning Shield, Stitches, and then a Devour. What what is our Asmodan doing? Ugh, 6 to 27. Brutal. Brutal. Oh, and I'm in the belly again. Oh my god, killed before it could even go off. How long does that take to go off? 3 seconds. God, that lasts forever. Well, sorry for the absolutely abysmal game going on right now. I would say that I should probably do another one, but I don't even want to. Oh no. I got hungry and bit into my sandwich. Well, that was my first time playing Alextraza. So, you're going to have to give me a little bit of grace. Okay. Let's go back and see. Let's pull up, I don't know. Ooh, Lily's available to play. Now, that would be fun. If I got a Lily game, y'all would be so entertained. Independence and dependence of self consciousness, lordship and bondage. Self consciousness is in and for itself when and by the fact that it is in and for itself for another self consciousness. That is, it is only as something recognized. The concept of this, its unity in its duplication, of the infinity realizing in its self consciousness, is a many sided and ambiguous interlacing, so that the moments of this unity must on the one hand be kept strictly apart, and on the other hand must in this differentiation at the same time also be taken and cognized not as not distinct, or always in their opposite significance. The twofold sense of this distinct moment lies in the essence of self consciousness, which is to be infinite, or immediately the contrary of the determinacy in which it is posited, the explication of the concept of the spiritual unity in its duplication present to us, the movement of recognition. There is for self consciousness another self-consciousness. It has come out of itself. It has twofold significance. First, it has lost itself. There is for self-consciousness another self-consciousness. It has come out of itself. This has twofold significance. First, it has lost itself, for it finds itself as another essence. Secondly, in doing so, it has sublated the other, for it does not see the other as an essence either, but in the other sees its own self. It must sublate this otherness of itself in this sublation of the first double sense, and is therefore itself a second double sense. First, it must proceed to sublate the other independent essence in order thereby to become certain of itself as the essence. Secondly, in doing so, it proceeds to sublate its own self, for this other is itself. This ambiguous sublation of its ambiguous otherness is equally an ambiguous return into itself. For first, through the sublation, it receives back its own self, for by sublating its otherness, it again becomes equal to itself. But secondly, it equally gives the other self consciousness back to it again, for it found itself in the other. It sublates this being of itself in the other, thus lets the other again go free. Sip of water. But this movement of self consciousness in relation to another self consciousness has in this way been represented as the doing of one of the self consciousnesses. But this doing of the one has itself the double significance of being both its own doing and the doing of the other as well. For the other is equally independent, closed within itself, and there is nothing in it of which it is not itself the origin. The first consciousness does not have the object before it, as the object initially is only for desire, but an independent that is for itself, to which, therefore, it can do nothing for itself. If that object does not do in its own self what the first does to it, thus the movement is simply the double movement of the two self consciousnesses. Each sees the other do the same as it does. Each does itself what it requires of the other, and therefore also does what it does only in so far as the other does the same. One-sided doing would be useless because what is supposed to happen can only come about through both. Okay, so there's a duality within our perception of self consciousness. Thus, the doing has double sense, not only because it is directed on itself as well as on the other, but also because it is inseparably the doing of the one as well as the other. In this movement, we see repeated the process which presented itself as a play of forces, but repeated in consciousness. What in that play was for us is here to the extremes themselves. The middle term is self consciousness, which splits into the extremes, and each extreme is this exchanging of its determinancy and absolute transition into the opposite determinancy. But as consciousness, it does indeed come outside itself, yet in its being outside itself, it is at the same time kept back within itself for itself, and its outside itself is for it. It is for it that it immediately is and is not another consciousness, and equally that this other is for in itself only when it sublates itself as being for itself, then as and is for itself only in the being for itself of the other. Each is to the other the middle term, through which each mediates itself with itself and joins together with, and each is to itself and to the other, an immediate essence that for itself, at the same time, which at the same time is for itself only through this mediation. They recognize themselves as mutually recognizing one another. Oh man. The only thing that I can think of is two people on a train like staring at each other, being like, "I see you and you see me, and we're both here sitting on this train," uh, and that's happening at all times. within our self-consciousness. This pure concept of recognition of the duplicating of self consciousness in its unity now has to be considered to see how its process appears for self consciousness. At first, the process will present the side of the inequality of the two, or the bifurcation of the middle term into the extremes, which as extremes are opposed to one another, one being only recognized, the other only recognizing. For self-consciousness is initially simple being for itself, equal to its own self through the exclusion from itself of everything else. Its essence and absolute object is to it I, and this immediacy, or in this being of its being for itself, it is a singleton. What is other for it is as an unessential object, marked with the character of the negative, but the other is also a self consciousness. An individual comes face to face with an individual. Entering the scene immediately in this way, they are for one another in the manner of ordinary objects, independent shapes. Consciousness is submerged in the being of life. For here the object that determines itself as life, consciousness that have not yet accomplished for each other the movement of absolute abstraction, of eradicating all immediate being, and of merely the purely negative being of consciousness equal to itself, or have not as yet presented themselves to each other as pure being for itself, that is, as self consciousness. Each is indeed certain of its own self, but not of the other, and therefore its own certainty of itself still has no truth. For its truth would be only that its own being for itself had presented itself to it as an independent object, or what is the same thing, that the object had presented itself as this pure certainty of itself. But according to the concept of recognition, this is not possible unless each of these objects accomplishes this pure abstraction of being for itself, the one for the other, just as the other for the one, each in itself by its own doing, again by doing of the other. Okay, I kind of get that. The idea that you like I know I'm real, you know you're real, but I can't guarantee that you're real, and you can't guarantee that I'm real, because we might just be an abstraction of one of the other. But at the end of the day, we are real because of a lot of other reasons, not just our own perception of what is real. Like the way that you would stand in the grass and make an imprint on the ground is, and we're losing the metaphor. But the presentation of itself as the pure abstraction of self consciousness consists in showing itself as the pure negation of its objective mode, or in showing that it is not attached to any determinate being there, not to the universal singularity, of being there in general, not attached to life. This presentation is the twofold doing of the other, and doing through its own self. In so far as it is the doing of the other, so each claims at the death of the other. But in this, the second doing is also present, the doing through its own self, for the former involves the staking of its own life. Thus, the relationship of the two self consciousnesses is determined in such a way that they prove themselves and each other through a life and death combat. They must engage in this combat, for they must elevate their certainty of themselves, certainty of being for themselves, to the truth, in the other and in themselves. And it is only through staking one's life that freedom is established, and it is proved to self consciousness the essence is not being, not the immediate mode in which it comes in the scene, not in its submergence in the expansion of life, but rather that there is nothing present in it which would not be a vanishing moment for it, that it is only pure being for itself. The individual who has not risked his life may well be recognized as a person, but it has not attained to the truth of this recognition as recognition of an independent self consciousness. Similarly, as each stakes its life, so must each aim at the other's death, for it values the other no more than itself. Its essence presents itself to it as another, It is outside itself and must sublate its being outside itself. The other is a manifoldly entangled consciousness that simply is. It must intuit its otherness as pure being for itself or as absolute negation. I feel almost a little bit distressed at this idea over the conflict that has to happen between two self consciousnesses, but hopefully that's going to be answered a little bit later on. But if I sound distressed, that's a little bit why. However, this trial by death sublates the truth which was supposed to issue from it, just as it thereby also sublates the certainty of itself in general. For as life is the natural position of consciousness, independence without absolute negativity, so death is the natural negation of consciousness. Negation without independence, which thus remains without the required significance of recognition. Death has indeed given rise to the certainty that both of them staked their life and scorned it, in themselves and in the other, but not for those who endured this combat. They sublate their consciousness posited in this alien essentiality, which is natural oh, which is natural being there, or they sublate themselves and are sublated as extremes, wanting to be for themselves. But with this there vanishes from the play of exchange the essential moment, that of decomposing into extremes with opposite determinancies, and the middle term collapses into a dead unity which is decomposed into dead, unopposed extremes that simply are, and the two do not reciprocally give and receive themselves back from each other through consciousness, but leave each other free only indifferently as things. Their deed is abstract negation, not the negation of consciousness, which sublates in such a way as to preserve and maintain which is sublated, and thereby survives its being sublated. In this experience, it dawns on self consciousness that life is as essential to it as pure self consciousness. In immediate self consciousness, the simple I is the absolute object, which, however, is for us or in itself the absolute mediation and has at its essential moment subsistent independence. The dissolution of that simple unity is the result of the first experience. Through through this there is posited a pure self-consciousness, and a consciousness which is not purely for itself but for another, i.e., as consciousness that is, or consciousness in the shape of the thinghood. These the two moments are essential, since initially they are unequal and opposed, and their reflection into unity has not been ensued. They are as two opposed shapes of consciousness. One is the independent consciousness for which the essence is being for itself. The other is dependent consciousness for which the essence is life, or being for another. The former is the lord, and the latter is the bondsman. Okay, we're starting to establish some hierarchies here. And I'm just rereading through because I'm like, wait, what? Is the independent consciousness the former? Two moments are essential. One is the Lord is the independent consciousness for which the essence is being for itself. The other is the dependent consciousness for which the essence is life, or being for another. Okay. So one is the preservation of the self at all cost, and the other is the experience of life and the engagement with others. Lord and bondsman. I wish that it was not Lord and bondsman. The Lord is the consciousness that is for itself, no longer merely the concept of such a consciousness. Rather, it is a consciousness that is for itself, which is mediated with itself through another consciousness, namely through a consciousness to whose essence it belongs to be synthesized with independent being or thinghood in general. The Lord gets into relation with these two moments to a thing as such, the object of desire, and to the consciousness for which thinghood is what is essential. And since he is A, as concept of self consciousness, immediate relation of being for itself, but B, from now on, at the same time as mediation, or as a being for itself which is for itself only through another, he is related A, immediately to both, and B, mediatedly, mediately? Probably mediatedly, but that's, you just don't say mediatedly to each through the other. The Lord relates himself immediately to the bondsman through the independent being, for it is just this which holds the bondsman. It is his chain from which he could not abstract in the combat, thus proving to be dependent, to have his independence in thinghood. But the Lord is the power over this being, for he proved in the combat that it counts for him only as something negative, since he is the power over this, while this being is the power over the other. In this syllogism, he thus has the other under him. Equally, the Lord relates himself mediately to the thing through the bondsman. The bondsman, as self consciousness in general, also relates himself negatively to the thing and sublates it, but at the same time, the thing is independent for the bondsman, and he therefore cannot, through his negative negating, have done with it to the point of annihilation, or he can or he only works on it. For the Lord, by contrast, there comes about through this mediation of the immediate relation as sheer negation of the thing or enjoyment. He succeeds in doing what desire failed to do, in having done with it, and satisfying himself in enjoyment. Desire failed in this because of the thing's independence, but the Lord, who has interposed the bondsman between it and himself, thereby joins together only with the dependence of the thing, and enjoys it purely. As for the side of independence, he leaves that to the bondsman, who works on the thing. In these two moments, recognition comes about for the Lord through another consciousness, for this other consciousness posits itself in these moments as something unessential, first in working on the thing, and secondly in dependency on a determinate being there. In neither moment can it become master over being and attain to absolute negation. Thus there is present here, in this moment of recognition, in which the other consciousness sublates itself as being for itself, and thereby it does what the first does to it. Likewise, the other moment, that is the doing of the second, is the first's own doing, for what the bondsman does is really the doing of the Lord. To the Lord alone belongs being for itself, the essence. He is the pure negative power for which the thing is nothing, and thus the pure essential doing in this relationship to the bondsman belongs a doing that is not pure, but unessential. For the recognition proper, the moment is lacking. What the Lord does to the other, he should also do to himself. I cannot agree more. And what the bondsman does to himself, he should also do to the other. What has thereby arisen is a recognition that it is one sided and unequal. Okay, good. Because I'm like, man, this is sounding like a terrible. This is the exact hierarchies of capitalism recreating itself within self consciousness to the degree that I'm like, Hegel, are we actually talking about like human nature of self consciousness, or are we talking about self consciousness post colonialism, post imperialism, post exposure to lording over another person? In this, the unessential consciousness is for the Lord the object, which constitutes the truth of certainty of himself. But it is clear that this object does not correspond to its concept, but rather that there where the Lord has fulfilled himself, he finds something quite other than an independent consciousness. What is for him is not an independent consciousness, but a dependent one. Therefore, he is not certain of being for itself as the truth, but his truth is rather the unessential consciousness and its unessential doing. The truth of the independent consciousness is accordingly the servile consciousness. This servile consciousness does indeed appear initially outside of itself, and not as the truth of self consciousness. But just as lordship showed that its essence is the inverse of what it wants to be, so too servitude is in its consummation will really turn into the contrary of what it immediately is. As a consciousness driven back into itself, it will withdraw into itself and be converted into true independence. We have seen what servitude is only in relationship to lordship, but it is self consciousness, and accordingly, we now have to consider what it is in and for itself. Initially, for servitude, the Lord is the essence. Hence, the independent consciousness that is for itself is its truth. A truth, however, that for it is not yet within it, but it does in fact have within itself this truth of pure negativity and being for itself, for it has experienced this essence within it. That is to say, this consciousness has had anxiety, not about this or that, and not just at odd moments, but anxiety for its whole essence. For it has felt the fear of death, of the absolute Lord. In this it has been internally dissolved, has trembled through and through within itself, and everything fixed has quaked in it. But this pure universal moment, the absolute liquidization of the subsistence, is the simple essence of self consciousness, absolute negativity, pure being for itself, which is thus within this consciousness. This moment of pure being for itself is also for it. In the Lord of this moment is its object. Furthermore, this consciousness is not only this universal dissolution in general, but in its service it accomplishes it actual but in its service it accomplishes it actually in serving it sublates its attachment to natural being there in all singular moments, and gets rid of this being there by working on it. However, the feeling of absolute power in general and in the singularity of service is only dissolution in itself. And although the fear of the Lord is indeed the beginning of wisdom, I don't know about that. In this, the consciousness is for itself, not being for itself. Through work, however, it comes to its own self. In the moment which corresponds to desire in the Lord's consciousness, and the side of unessential relation to the thing did seem to have fallen to the lot of the serving consciousnesses, since in that relation the thing retains its independence. Desire has reserved to itself the pure negating of the object, and thereby unalloyed self feeling. But for that reason, this satisfaction is itself only a disappearance, for it lacks the objective side or subsistence. Work, by contrast, is desire held in check, fleetingness staved off, or work cultivates. The the negative relation to the object becomes its form and something permanent, because it is precisely for the worker that the object has independence. This negative middle term or the formative doing is at the same time the singularity or the pure being for itself of consciousness, which now in working steps outside into the element of permanence. In this way, therefore, the working consciousness arrives at the intuition of independent being as its own self, being as of its own self. However, the forming does not only have this positive significance in that the serving consciousness, in that in it the serving consciousness as pure being for itself becomes a being in its own eyes, the forming also has a negative significance in the face of its first moment, fear. For in cultivating the thing, the serving consciousness's own negativity, its being for itself becomes an object for it only through its sublating the being, the form, opposed to it. But this objective negative is just the alien essence before which it has trembled. Now, however, it destroys this alien negative, posits itself such as a negative in the element of permanence, and thereby becomes for itself a being for itself. In the Lord, the being for itself is another to it, or only for it. In fear, the being for itself is within itself, in its cultivating. The being for itself becomes for it as its own being for itself, and it arrives at the consciousness that that it itself is in and for itself. The form is posited outside, but it is not regarded as thereby becoming something other than serving consciousness, for it is precisely this form that it is its pure being for itself, which in this externality is seen by it to be the truth. Through this rediscovery of itself by itself, the serving consciousness realizes that it is precisely in its labor, wherein it seemed to have only an alienated mind, that it acquires a mind of its own. Through this rediscovery of itself by itself, the serving consciousness realizes that it is precisely in its labor, wherein it seemed only to have an alienated mind, that it acquires a mind of its own. Let's think about that one for a second. Again, the Lord consciousness being the being for itself, the thing that exists because it is what Lord, like, it is what won in that combat, and it simply exists as the primary driving version of self-consciousness. It's not doing the work because it won the combat. Because it won combat, it does not improve. It is not growing. It builds itself off of the other consciousness, the other self-consciousness, the worker, the laborer who literally builds an understanding of itself and then provides that to the Lord consciousness for free. Does that sound like anything that we might be familiar with in real life? Where we are so alienated from our labor that our labor exists only to support the Lord consciousness. Again, this is why capitalism is so pervasive, is because it does not just exist in the material conditions of us going to work, paying taxes, and all that crap. It exists literally in our minds, splitting our consciousness into these forms of hierarchies. I feel like there are so many examples of Native American literature, First People literature, where it talks about the difference in the psychology of the colonized and the colonizer, as being this separate thing. These are the Lord and the bondsman self-consciousness. I don't believe are natural. I don't believe that is part of the human, or supposed to be part of the human experience. I believe that creation of the two individual self-consciousnesses that are constantly vying for our attention is a result, very much so, of the power that the Lord consciousness experiences. And that's what drives us at a fundamental level. That's what drives some people to, I should say some people, not us, some people to lord over others, because they know how powerful they feel when they do it, because they won the combat. And so long as they can win the next combat, then they don't have to do that hard work, whatever that hard work is, which is usually everything. You know, I think about the monarchies of England, where they would talk about how the king wouldn't, reach into the wastebasket to pick out something that he had dropped in there. He literally would call servants over so that way he could say, "Hey, could you please pick this thing up out of the wastebasket? I didn't mean to throw it away, and now it's in there." And they're like, "Can't you just pick it up for yourself?" But they don't say that because he is Lord and they are the laborer. Hmm. But the thing is that the labor eventually claims a mind of its own. We, the people, eventually claim minds of our own. For this reflection, the two moments of fear and of service. Oh, you know what? Hold on. Nope. I'm going to keep ranting before I keep going. We claim a mind of our own because we know what it is to be Lord, because we think about it. We think about it in a way that the Lord cannot think of what it is to be servant. The ruling class, the bourgeois class, cannot fathom what it means to be you and I, to be working class. It cannot fathom that. But we can fathom what it is to live off of our labor, because we know what we're losing at a subconscious level, at a self-consciousness level, as Hegel is talking about here. At a self-consciousness level, we know what we are losing. We know what is being taken from us, and we are able to fathom from the subtraction of our very essence what they are enjoying. They only know the surplus of our existence. They do not know our experience. And because of that, we gain our consciousness. We gain that mind of our own that then has the informational advantage over the Lord consciousness. Again, Hegel's just talking about self-consciousness, but I absolutely understand how if you're Marx or Engels, you're reading this and you're like, man, this is messed up. We got to talk about this a little bit more, especially about the alienation of labor. I got to take a sip of water. Man, this is actually starting to heat up. Here I and here I was bored for the past 5 streams. I'm joking. I'm only kind of joking. The introduction to Hegel is definitely rough, um, but this is starting to make a little bit more sense. Not because of what Hegel is writing, but also the additional content that is provided by Marx and Engels. a little bit later on. Okay, jumping back into it for real this time. For this reflection, the two moments of fear and of service in general, as also that of cultivating, are necessary, and both at the same time in a universal mode. Without the discipline of service and obedience, fear remains a formality, and does not extend to the conscious actuality of being there. Without the cultivating, fear remains inward and mute, and consciousness does not become for it itself. If consciousness forms the thing without that initial absolute fear, it is only a vain mind of its own, for its form or negativity is not negativity in itself, and therefore its forming cannot give it the consciousness of itself as the essence. If it has not endured absolute fear, but only some anxiety, the negative essence has remained for it something external. Its substance has not been infected by it through and through. Since not all acquisitions of its natural consciousness have been shaken, it still belongs in itself to determinate being. A mind of one's own is self will, a freedom that is still enmeshed in servitude. As little as the pure form can become the essence for it, just as little as just as little is that form regarded as expansion over the singular, a universal forming, an absolute concept. Rather, it is a skill that is master over a few things, but not over the universal power and over the whole objective essence. Okay, that brings us to part B. So that was A of self consciousness. Now we're on to part B, freedom of self consciousness, stoicism. Stoicism. I guess stoicism is a little bit of an older thing. Skepticism and the unhappy consciousness. Um, yeah, I'm going to be interested into checking this out, but we're going to play another game of Here's the Storm because we're going to do another ARAM. Because I got to cool down. I got to cool down. I think it's a wonderful thought experiment to sit down and think whatever you do, whatever you do, think about how you and the work that you do is is alienated from you, is taken from you. What does it mean when you do something and the results of that action don't return back to you? I think about marketing all the time. I think about marketing every time I see an ad. Um, if anybody watched the Super Bowl, you know, and saw the ads that went on, um, the people who sat in those rooms and thought up those marketing. Oh God, I don't want to play Garrosh. God, I should have gone Malthael. Dang it! If only I had known what the other team would choose. I need a beer for this. Yeah, that's fair. God, me too. Just being stealth for 1 second. So I need to go with long shot. Alright, so Nova is a stealthy assassin. My entire job is to hit my Q. Oh my god, they thought that was me. Fuck. Grab some weens, boys. What does that even mean? What does that even mean? I'm gonna go with the mercenary quest here. No way. No way. I know Dahaka. I know that range did not hit me. Said the person who knew nothing about Dahaka. Okay, we've got no healers this game, so War of Attrition is the best idea. Okay, don't get in melee range, me. And don't stand on those Junkrat bombs, me. I've already had, what, 3 deaths? Oh, God, I'm throwing. God, I'm so bad at this game. I just need to lock in. Shrimple is that. Get in, get out. Get in, get out. Get in, get out. I think I'm going to pick up armor-piercing rounds at level 7, just so that way I'm not tempted to constantly auto-attack like I currently am. Nice. Oh my god, it's Dahaka. Dang, Junkrat bombs. I'm so squishy. I need longer range snipes. I need to just be. There we go. Anti-armor shells. Oh, wait, reduces cooldown. There you go, burst. Burst, 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 burst. Name of the game is Burst. He's walking right at me. No freaking way. Oh my god. Couldn't give me that time. Okay. Now I'm starting to play Nova the way that I'm supposed to play Nova. No, I'm not. Comical timing. Comical timing. Dear viewer, I apologize for nothing. I promised you suffering, and I deliver. But the suffering was supposed to be mine, not yours. I think I go Precision Strike. Got him. Look at that perfect stealth. Okay, we took bribe. Time to use it. Oh, nice. Nice dodge, dude. Okay, increase snipe range. Okay, let's see. Oh no. They know, they know, they know, they know. Okay, let's go. I need a W then auto. Okay, W from stealth. Mind games. Just playing mind games. The Diablo Angel Breath looks so cool. I missed my snipe. Alright, let's go back. Let's pick this up. I have clearly unbound my... And you know what? We can just drop that turret wherever. Yikes. Man, he got me. Oh, man. Oh, man. I forgot. The Dahaka, you know, he just... For a squishy like me, he can just walk at me. Same like what he just did with that Kael'thas. And just walking at me is very scary. I think maybe I should have gone with perfect shot. But I'm not hitting my snipes anyways, so it's not the worst thing in the world. Nice. Anything to keep that Dahaka down? Missed my snipe. Thank God that's never happened before. Alright, let's steal their camp. Let's get killed. Shit. Sorry for all the folks at home for my foul language. Alright, let's just go with Precision Barrage. So then we'll have 2 charges of our ult. And there went half my health bar. Really need a rebind. Dang, I really would have loved to have gotten to my health pot. I don't know if you could hear by my silence, but just how scared I was. My fear was overwhelming. Having an entire team that can just jump you or crawl under the ground towards you is horrific. Sucks that I died for all that. Oh, I didn't die. Hey, that was some damage. Okay. Oh my god, that's Dahaka. Nice. Okay, let's go, team. The fear is paying off. Oh, I shouldn't have said that. Shoot. Okay. 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 Now we just gotta go over here. Drop that right there. Oh no. Oh my god. I wasn't actually throwing. I wasn't actually throwing. Oh my god, I needed a lock in so bad. Oh. Oh. Yeah, Diablo, crazy, crazy carry. Crazy carry. Oh man. Okay. I that felt good. Um that was my first time playing Nova. The joke that never stops being funny. Um oh man, how far did we get? How far did we get in Phenomenology of the Spirit? Let's see. Okay, I think we added about 19 pages. We might be able to. Let's. Oh, God, that game was so. That had my heart beating. That had my heart beating. Every available neuron in my brain was active to make sure that I could at least contribute something to my team. I went full silent mode. Um, This is going to be so weird to watch. I don't know. Maybe in like a couple of years, I'm going to go back and watch these videos, and I'm going to be like, wow, you really couldn't focus on more than one thing at a time, could you? Absolute COVID brain. Absolute COVID brain. Um, Honestly, I'm feeling like we leave it here. We got through section A. Um, or section sorry the first part of section B, and now we can pick it up with part B of B, freedom of self-consciousness. We could talk about stoicism, skepticism and the unhappy consciousness. Stick around a little bit later on today. I'm going to be playing some Bread and Circuses, meaning that I will be playing some either World of Warcraft or something like that. Again, Bread and Circuses is not phenomenology of the spirit. It is just, me playing games. So I hope that you learned something. I feel like I actually did this time around from reading some Hegel. I hope that you join me next time, whenever next time will be, and I'll try to make an announcement a little bit earlier in advance. But as always, stay safe and do whatever you need to do to advance the means of the working class, or advance the material conditions of the working class. I hope you have a very good day, and we'll talk soon. Alrighty, bye.